Assalamu alaikum everyone, Ex-Aviation Cadet Sabir here for my channel Aviation Cadet 9936. First of all, is a disclaimer that I'm not talking on the behalf of any of the responsible authorities who are dealing with Air India 171 crash. Till the time we get the preliminary report or the CVR data, until then, everything is speculations. And should there be any speculations about something that has already happened? Yes, there should be. So that's how academics grew, critics, non-critics, and that's how you get your knowledge, get your understanding straight. I'm not going to recap because people always watch all these kind of things, especially the hot topic, and that is Air India 171, the Dreamliner Boeing 787 crashed. So yesterday I uploaded in a video in which I denied the deployment of RAD. So I will continue from that one, and today I will give my first theory ever, how this probably would have happened. So let's get to the business right now. Now, the first thing about the RAD deployment, again, that was a concorded video sent to Captain Steve first, and that video was dubbed for sure. Because the Boeing 787, their own website, when the introduction about Boeing 787, it says very clearly that RAD cannot be deployed before the height of 400 feet. And even if it's deployed manually, it's not going to function because of less air pressure, less airspeed, whatever you call it. It's not going to give out the results. So even if you deploy it manually, it's not going to work. So there's no way that the pilots would deploy it. Second, it has to be engine flame out. Dual engine failure, total hydraulic failure, total electric failure. These are 3 or 4 conditions under which the RAD is deployed. So once the aircraft has, and during the takeoff, it cannot be deployed, because that's the last option for the aircraft flight computer, to work on, and then finally it decides to, deploy the RATs. So on takeoff run, there's no possibility, and the altitude of Ahmedabad airport is 189 feet. So it climbed up till 650 feet approximately. So if you minus 650 from 189, you roughly get 400 feet. So no, the RAD cannot be deployed, one thing. Why this theory of dual engine failure and RAD deployment is, again, it is to, put the blame on machine this time. Because this favors India. That if they can blame the Boeing 787 for some reasons, they can get a good, outcome out of that one. Now let's talk about what could have happened. In order to understand what could have happened, we need to know the how the engines work. Now, this is a technical thing, but everyone drives the cars, and you have the motorbikes, and especially the motorbike riders, what happens that the plug located on the carburetor of the engines, they give a spark, right? And this spark, once the fuel, and you give air in the fuel to and normally the mixture is set to 1:1 ratio. So how much fuel is being burned, how much air is coming in, and that provides the spark, and that's how the engines work. These are 2-piston engines, 4-stroke engines, or 2-stroke engines. We're talking about them. Then when you come to the cars, it's also fixed, and you don't change the air to fuel ratio. But planes, they work on different altitudes, and as you go up, the air gets thinner. And if it's too hot, the air is also thinner, because that's basic science, that things expand once they are heated up. And apart from the water, by the way, water is from 0 to 4 degrees, water is totally different. So expansion means that the molecules of the air, they get away from each other. So now the density of the air is less. And you need a certain density of air mixed with the fuel in the engine. And that's how the spark happens. And then that's how the engines run. Now, think of your coffee machine in your house. If you have an automatic coffee machine, how it works, that you put the beans on top, like the machine I use. You put the beans on top, and water is coming through another container. So then you just go and push the button. So the machine is set to a certain mixture ratio, that how much water it's going to take and how much beans it's going to take. And then it gives out the coffee at the bottom. This is typical, like normal automatic machine I'm talking about. And you don't have to do much of the setting. You just go, push the button, make sure the beans container is filled and the water container is filled. And then you just need to push the button and it comes out. Now, the engines work on the same principle. Air is the water in this case, and fuel is the beans. And then on propeller aircrafts, pilots maintain this mixture ratio whenever required. When they're on higher altitude, when the air is thinner, they get the mixture to richer position. Richer position means more air intake and less fuel, or they control the fuel supply to the engines. So on my propeller aircraft, Mashak, that's Air Coming engines from Switzerland, and the first one I flew, and that was a propeller aircraft. So we had two levers on the right side, and at the on the ground, when we were close to the runway, our elevation was about 950 feet above sea level. So you gotta get this mixture rich and pitch fine. Mixture rich, that would be 1:1 ratio of the fuel, and pitch fine, that's the propeller's angle, pitch of the propellers to get more intake of air. Because suppose if the propeller is like this, it's going to block air and it's not going to go into the engines. So you could change the angle of that one. So those blades angles could be, that's what's called the pitch. What happens if you have set the fuel ratio to full and you get your blade levels like this? The air is going to be blocked. Fuel is going to be more into the fuel is waiting for the air to come in. Put that scenario in the coffee machine, that you have all the requirement for the coffee. The beans are there and they have been ground and they enter the final assembly unit, and you stop the supply of water. So would you get any coffee? No. That fuel, no matter how much beans were there, they're going to be sitting there, and the machine is not going to send you the coffee out. So same is the case here. So you block the supply of the air, and fuel is still going into the engines. So what's going to happen? No combustion is going to happen, or even the combustion that is happening because of less supply of air, less supply of oxygen, you could say, is going to let the engines stop right away. Whenever the air supply is cut, like if you cut your air supply to your own breath, what happens? Same goes with the engines. So now, that's the basic understanding of how the engines work. Now, as we have different altitudes, suppose once you are going hiking, you're going to the higher altitudes, sometimes you need to carry the oxygen bags with you, because the air is very thin. The oxygen molecules are really far away. So in order to take the body requirement oxygen, you can't do that. So you have to take longer breaths so that you could get more air that has more oxygen in it, thinner air. So that's why you have deep breaths, and you start to, like the wolf, three little pigs went out one day, and I'll huff and I'll puff. So you start to huff and puff. So aircrafts also work on the same thing. Although jet engines, they also supply the air into, but mostly they work on the outer air, the atmospheric air outside. They also take input from there. They don't generate air inside the jet engine, but this flow of air is very smooth as compared with propellers or with anything else. So this is what happens, that you need to make this ratio according to the height of the aircraft. You have to make sure that this is the correct ratio you're getting in. So now let's come to the third point. I would highly recommend you, Mr. Jeff, his videos. He posted the first video on 13th of June, right after the accident, and he was the first one who actually said on the rat deployment thingy, without even having the new video evidence, the newly original video sent by that little boy. He already had his theory in line. So although I don't believe in that theory that rat was deployed, it cannot be deployed, period. But what I'm saying is, what the aviational experts believe now, YouTubers, those who said that pilot might have accidentally got the flaps up, which was also refuted later on because the flaps were perfectly in position. There are two police officers standing on the flaps, on the wings. So that was also gone. But this man already had that theory in line. Of course, in case of dual engine failures, the rat would be deployed, but this is not the dual engine failure. This is the cutoff of air supply for some reasons. And the fuel was just sitting there, no combustion happened, and that's why no lift, and the plane went down. So his theory, new theory, which has many faults though, and the calculation of the formula to calculate the density altitude. What is density altitude? So everything has standards, and some like 1 meter. What is 1 meter? What's 1 yard? So there's a standard located somewhere in the world, and we compare things with that one, and that's how we declare it a yard or a meter or a second or a microsecond or a year or whatever. So there are people who work on these things. So that's why we have the leap year and stuff like that. So same is the case under normal condition above sea level, which is 0 feet from the sea level, whatever the sea level is on the average. So that's the average height the planes use, which is 0. Now at the 0 degrees, on the normal room temperature, that's considered 15 degrees Celsius. I don't know what the Fahrenheit's, 15 degrees Celsius. Your aircraft on the ground should have 1 psi or pressure, 1 psi, 1 per square inch. This is the standard. And here you would have the thickest air, like enriched with the oxygen and the carbon dioxide and the nitrogen, perfect, like 75% of nitrogen, 22% of oxygen, and then 1% of carbon monoxide and carbon. So that's the perfect air you would get at 0 feet from the ground level, above sea level, not ground level, and then at those temperatures. So once these temperatures, they vary. Supposing the temperature is 20 degrees, now the air would be lesser, and your height would be shown differently, because that's how the barometric pressure works. So you would be shown probably a little bit higher elevation, because as soon as you go up, the air gets thinner. So now once the aircraft senses that the density of the air is a little less, so it thinks that it is on a higher elevation. And for that, it changes the pitch of the engine blades that are getting the intake. So that pitch is changed. So it is automatic. There's nothing, there are no input by the pilots on this kind of, because that's a computer job. And the passenger airlines are equipped to do that kind of change in the pitches, in the pitch of the blades. While in propellers, we have done it perfectly. We have done it by ourselves, and most of the time we don't change the settings because it's enough for us for propellers. But for jet engines and for the passenger aircrafts, it's done by the computer, the flight computer, and that controls everything, hydraulically, electrically, whatever you would call it. And thinner the air, the pitch of the blade would be changed, and it would try to intake more air into the engine so that the fuel assigned, and that's the only thing which a pilot can control. He has a fuel switch control button. So he can cut it off, or he can put it on run, put it on start, put it on whatever the aircraft is, whatever the, see that. So he can control manually the supply of the fuel to the engines. But normally they don't do it. Just at the start of the engine, they put it to the start position and then push the buttons and the engine starts, which is also started by the computer, especially in Boeing 787. So let's come to the final phase. I think this explanation is, if it's getting too deeper, let me know. Now what has happened? On that day, there's a formula to calculate the density altitude. And that goes with the pressure altitude, we call it QNH, of that day on the ground, whatever the elevation is on the ground, whatever the pressure altitude is. On that day at Ahmedabad, it was 29.5. So they put that pressure altitude into the flight control system, FCS, of the aircraft, to the computer. Computer doesn't know, so the pilot tells the computer that what is the pressure, because this is what is required to be input into the flight control system. Okay, the first thing comes, what's the outside pressure? 29.5, done. Then you go for the atmospheric temperature of that day on that place. So that was recorded at 41 degrees. So the temperature was 41 degrees. Now you have the atmospheric pressure of that field, that airfield, that runway. You have the temperature of that, and then there is a standard chart of the temperatures according to the pressure and the temperature. What could be the possible temperature told to the computer to calculate the fuel and air ratio. So then that's times 120. So the density altitude formula is pressure altitude plus, in parenthesis, you put the OAT, the offset temperature, minus the ISA temperature, parenthesis closed, and plus, times by 120. So on that day, the temperature outside was 41, and the ISA chart, according to that pressure and the outside temperature, the ISA temperature was showing 14.2. So if you put all these values inside and then you do the calculation, well, by the way, Jeff did the wrong calculations and he had a different formula, but the end result is almost the same. But his calculations shown on his video are wrong. It comes up to like 13,000 feet. I'm just putting the picture over here, you can see it. But 29.5 plus 41 minus 14.2 times 120. Eventually, at the end, you come up with around 3,800. If you apply this formula, which is available on Google, you get 3,800 plus feet. And for Jeff's formula, you get around 4,008 feet. So what does that mean? That means once you input all these information into the computer, this you should have put into the computer. This is very important to understand because this is the real time information. Now the airplane doesn't think it's at 189 feet, which is under the standard circumstances, under the standard temperatures, under the standard atmospheric pressure. The plane should show 189 feet on the ground. But once you put these QNH settings into the flight computer system, now the height by the plane shown would be around 4,000 feet. Now the engines, though, it's not at 200 degrees, it's at 4,000 feet, and it needs more air. So what are the engines going to do? They're going to change the pitch of the blades to suck more air into them so that whatever fuel is given to them, the best combustion ratio is achieved. And that's where something wrong had gone. Now, this could be two ways. One, the flight computer system malfunctioned. The input given by the pilots was right. Whatever they saw, they put it in, and the FCS calculated it wrong, malfunctioned. Now you can quote the guy who had same plane from New Delhi to Ahmedabad. He was saying the lights were flickering, the electrical system was failed, blah, 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 stuff like that. So we don't rule out, or it was sabotaged. If you are an Indian listener, you'll blame it on Pakistan. We will take it on the chin and bring some more Rafales. We need to get more scores, But could be sabotaged, could be hacked, could be done by any outer means because these are waves, okay? So microwaves, so you can control them like the drones. So, yep, I'm not ruling out any possibilities. And second, the pilot error, that they input it wrong. The airplane was thinking that it was on the ground. So the ground has thicker air, so it doesn't need much of the intake. So definitely the pitch angle of the blades would be changed. You have the same amount of fuel sitting, waiting for the right amount of air to come in. It doesn't come in. The initial combustion by APUs, by the internal combustion system of the jet engines, it is given to that. The engine starts, and once it rolls, of course, it reaches to its limit V1, and then it takes off. And after that, it totally depends on the air around it. Then what? That's why the whole system collapsed within 15 to 16 seconds, started to collapse. And the pilots had no clue how to take remedies. Even if you switch off the fuel control switch and turn it on to get the engine restart again, as I said earlier, the engine would take some time to have started. So that's what has happened. Wrong input into the flight control system, wrong pressure, wrong temperature, and wrong altitude, density altitude was given to the aircraft. And that's why it behaved like it was on 189 feet, but actually it was at 4,000 feet at least, according to those readings. So I hope this would also be added to the theories. We are just talking about the theories here because the CVR data and the cockpit voice recorder and the FDR, the flight data recorder, would give everything out clearly. But this makes more sense because in this case, no RAT would be deployed. Engines are busy waiting for the air to come in, and they're not getting the air. And the fuel is still there in the engines, and no combustion is happening. Initially, it happened because of the reasons I told you, and then no more combustion, and the plane doomed. Again, condolences to the families of everyone who lost their beloved ones. Hopefully that the report comes out quickly and solves each and every query. Thanks, over.